Sorry, that's just anti-trans.
Yeah, we're pretty much ready. I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit first.
Sure. I'm Olivia Maynard. I'm a Houstonian living in Texas, and I transitioned at exactly 40 years old. Is when I got, when I became legal and stuff. And that's all. I mean, I've had a chaotic life, and that's all I can say.
That's
I
fair
love your
enough.
channel, though.
Yeah, thanks for watching. It means a lot to me. Yeah, pretty much. What did you want to talk about?
Well, I don't know. As I'm watching the cast review things, I I'm drawn back into what I was is this topic of conversion
Yeah,
because I had it. And so I tried to speak to trans activists about the topic, and I can get no traction. And I just don't understand that. So I just want to figure out what is every like, I want us to all be on the same page and we're using terms. I don't know. I think that conversion therapy is bad, it's whether it makes like my contention is that I am trans because of conversion therapy. But I also understand if they then turned around and tried to cure me again, it would still be conversion. So I'm just stuck in this mental place. And we could talk about that if you want.
yeah, of course. I mean, if you're happy to, what kind of stuff did you experience?
Well, it was like the very first thing I did was I would get misgendered or gendered properly, depending on which side of this debate you want to be on, right? But people would think I was a girl. And so that upset my family. We are very religious. And so I had to practice male mannerisms all the time. And then I would have to acknowledge the identity of I'll stop being a girl. And I'll be like ripping up my pictures or, just routine. Like I promised to never, like one thing is my mom would I promised to never invite this girl to our home to ruin Christmas. And I'd have to rip my own picture up and throw it away. And we would do that all the time. Or like if, like I had a really big family. So they would give my cousins permission to just beat me up if I didn't follow the rules. Like how I held my cup. Like if I held my hump like too gay or whatever, they just would come and like it's immediate feedback. So it's a constant, immediate, violent feedback for doing the wrong thing. I had to get a whole new friend group. They controlled what TV I watched. Like I had to get rid of my easy bake oven, even though I was never even allowed to have Barbie. Things like that. It was years and years and years. And then I had to join social clubs that were male, shave my head, and then I had to wear my clothes, even like male clothes, right? I would get my brothers and cousins' clothes, but I had to wear them a certain way that didn't look too feminine. It was very confusing and it was very arbitrary. And it left me not understanding any of it at all because.
So it was very much violence based, like that was the punishment.
Yeah, it was violence and then weird psychological games.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what do you think of we hear the term conversion therapy a lot in reference to kind of therapy. What do you think of
Mm-hmm.
that? Do you think it ever constitutes conversion therapy?
It can, but it just depends. It's a very nuanced thing to talk about. If the therapist only has one thing that you're allowed to think, then that feels like conversion therapy to me. Meaning if you're not cured of being trans, this is a failure. That is to me conversion therapy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. It's like, what is art versus porn? It's a very gray middle. And what might be conversion for one person might not necessarily be for the other. Because I sought that out during my first therapy, because I didn't, I wanted to really understand if I should be doing this or not. And so I got an intensive gender therapy. And oddly, we spent very little time on gender. We spent most of the time on shame and trauma.
Yeah, so it sounds really like the best way forward in terms of conversion therapy is to like define it accurately.
Yeah. Or I wish we could just define what transgender is. Yes.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I think the lack of definition, like just definitions being the topic all the time for the debate, is so non-productive. Whether it's what is a woman, what is transgender, what is detransition, it feels like, there's a culture war and people are just talking past each other with sound bites.
True.
Just saying nothing of substance. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of distraction rather than really dealing with issues, I find.
But I do have sympathy for trans kids, but I'm so torn. Like I hear stories about them, and I think that it's important to, at least for me, to distinguish. Like there's the ones who identify very early, and I think that there's a trend that I see in certainly identified before 6 trans, and I think that's directly caused by violence and being told you better stop being a girl. I hear that story from my fellow people a lot. And then there's the FTMs who, upon puberty, suddenly hate their body. And I think that's a manifestation of something very different.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know what, but I think that's the group with the highest regret. Rush into a mastectomy or a hysterectomy or taking testosterone and then they can never go back. That's the group, I think, where we're seeing all these issues. And I've met several, and I don't know how to address that. I mean, we live in a sexist society, and they often have trauma themselves, molesting is generally, most of them were molested. Yeah, it is common. All of us were molested, to be quite honest. Most trans have a past of sexual trauma.
I mean, I don't personally. I don't know if do you think it has to be like sexual trauma or more trauma in general?
I think that it could be trauma in general, but I kind of believe that it's probably based mostly in sexual trauma.
Yeah, like maybe that's more of a predictor, you'd say, than other forms of trauma.
I mean, that's just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
And I certainly have no data to back that up. But it's just how just kind of anecdotally. Yeah.
That's fair enough. So you were saying about defining trans would be helpful. What would you think that trans should be defined as?
Well, for the purposes of, say, legalities, I would say a social and medical transition, not necessarily including surgery, but certainly changing your secondary characteristics to fit in.
Yeah.
So more like how many of, like, say, or people are switching back to transsexual. And so that I think the move to trying to use transsexual is a way to try to gatekeep the definition of transgender. Like it's just the definition of what people feel their identity is. It's like, I'm not a these, I'm a trans woman, and that sort of a thing.
Yeah. People just opt into it pretty much.
Well, yeah. And so the definition moved from, transition from one gender to another to I don't identify with the gender I was assigned at birth. And that phrase is so loaded and hard to understand for me. It could mean anything,
I feel like, I don't know, I've been trans for about 9 years. I feel like there was a lot of language that we used that was very metaphorical. Things like, I identify as a woman, things like, I feel like a woman born in the wrong body. And now it's become like literal. I feel like maybe that's happened to an extent. It's become like a literal use of things we used to say because it's hard to explain. Like, I don't know how to explain gender dysphoria to someone, you know?
Exactly. They were just useful slogans and phrases that tried to communicate a whole set of information that is impossible to convey, like a subjective experience. Like, how do you communicate a subjective experience? Or like the idea trans women are women. That is not, I don't think that that phrase started in any way to say that we are literally the same. It was just, this group of people are vulnerable and they deserve the same, rights and protections of other people. And since the law is going to let them into spaces, like the law changed to allow us to exist far before the debate started. And so it's kind of, it's a scary proposition to have everything rescinded. And I think that we started arguing in fear and taking things too literally. And also autism, a lot of trans are autistic and they didn't understand it was a metaphor.
One thing I've noticed, you said about autism, and yeah, it's definitely like autism is like overrepresented, but like we're seeing a rise in like more girls getting diagnosed with autism at a similar time as when we're seeing a lot more girls transitioning, where it used to be boys that would transition to girls, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how much being aware of like having an issue like autism is kind of opening doors which might not be open if you don't know you have something, but it's kind of hard to explain what I mean by that.
I understand how much of the increase in diagnosis is just awareness of the condition versus fitting in people into this new group who don't necessarily belong.
Yeah, because we almost treat it like an identity in a way. It seems like, I'm not sure. It's just very weird to me that recently it seemed to have been something that we're noticing much more in girls than we used to. And at the same time, we've got all these trans men coming out. It's a strange coincidence if that's what it is.
It is strange, but also I think that we don't talk enough about the environmental factors of either autism or trans. Right? We're throwing microplastics are everywhere and they are endocrine disruptors. I grew up on a soybean farm surrounded by Monsanto.
Oh, wow,
I don't
no
think that
you're
it
trans.
has zero effect. But yeah, so the environment has an effect. And we're just saying, oh, it's a social contagion. It's a moral failure. I don't know if girls are starting puberty earlier and earlier, and our bodies are changing over time, that you can just look. Since industrialization, especially since, the mass use of pesticides and pharmaceuticals and hormones in our meat and dairy, are we just going to ignore those effects? I don't know. I think that I drank a lot of milk as a kid, and that milk had estrogen in it because it needed to. I don't know the answer, but I don't think that anyone wants to take a real on it. I don't think either side is trying to be honest in the activist space anyway.
Yeah, they want it to either be an easy answer that is good or an easy answer that is bad. And they want to think in that kind of dual, there's only two options, binary.
Yeah. And I just am left like, how can serious people who want to make things better and see that we're on a not great trajectory, how can we make an impact and set the discussion to be productive?
Yeah, of course. Going back to you said about like environmental factors, should I say. I wonder, tally bots, I don't know what you're talking about. You need to explain if there's a problem. I wonder, like, it's easy to draw like connections between autism and stuff, I wonder how much of it is kind of being a difficult kid and being treated differently. I wonder how much that like factors in as well, like your upbringing.
It's hard to say. I know that I felt isolated and that affected me. I really don't know. I know that at least in my teen years, I like to lash out by either cross-dressing or like joining Miss Teen Ohio.
Oh my God.
And I did. And then, or like every Halloween, I was a girl at every Halloween, at every pep rally. I was, the football player who did the cheerleading. Every single opportunity to be in public, cross-dressed, I took it when I was an adolescent. And I don't know. Part of it was just me being defiant. I will not let you beat me, was the thought.
I got you. Did you know any trans people before you transitioned, or were you really kind of by yourself?
Yeah. I in Ohio, I did. My hairdresser, when I first left my little rural town, I got a trans hairdresser. She was from some Latin American country. And girl, she clocked me immediately. And I kind of freaked out and I stopped seeing her, but she was right. She's like, you need to do this now. You're all worked up. And I didn't listen to her, and she was right. And then I had met a couple. I had met a few, but I just couldn't join. I just couldn't at that time. And then here in Houston, I've met a few, and then it took me a few years. And then when I met my friend Nikki, who lived down the street, I didn't even know she was trans. Then I was like, oh, I have to do this. She helped me do it. And I always think she's the greatest person I've ever met.
Fair enough. I've got someone kind of bringing up AGP. What do you think of that?
The typology, I don't understand. Technically, I'm AGP, according to Ray Blanchard.
Same, yeah.
But I don't identify with that label, and I think that he's wrong. Not to say that the phenomenology of AGP isn't real. I know some. I have met them. They are gross. At least, the really bad kind of AGP that's like the Buffalo Bill stereotype, that is truly real. And they are mean, and they are angry toward the opposite kind. Like, they think that it's real, like the HEB versus HSTS. Those mean AGPs, they are mean to them. Because, I may or may not be one, but I'll tell you, the one I know is AGP, she hates me. And they kind of have always hated me. And they'll always pay the best. While at the same time, they want to skinwalk the HSTS type. And they will give you money for that. And that's how a lot of the HSTS pay to live, is rich AGPs. It's a weird dynamic.
Oh, so like HSTS sex workers, AGPs paying them, that's what you mean?
Oh, yeah, that's so common. That's so common. Like, they want to live vicariously. They think that you can teach them how to embody what they feel the HSTS embodies. That the look, the manner, just how effortlessly one can blend, that is a learned skill rather than an innate expression. And I think that they fail to understand.
Yeah. I want to ask, do you think it's like most trans people who would say, I'm not AGP, but I think it exists? Do you think most trans people wouldn't admit to it, even if it might be true about them?
I don't know. I would say they can come around. Like, my one friend, she was very unsure of herself, and she would never want to talk about it. Like, AGP, no. And she would be very afraid of the topic. It doesn't exist. And I'm like, it kind of exists. So I think that there is fear in the community, but as a matter of fact, I talked to her just the other day and she's like, yeah, this phenomenon exists. So I don't know. I think that you don't want to believe it because it's such an unflattering characterization of what our community might be or what oneself might be. And you don't want to see yourself as some creepy serial killer fetishist kind of thing. So no one wants to identify with that. I mean, I certainly don't, but it's not because I don't know. It's hard. It's a catch-22. So if my denial of being AGP is the primary evidence of me being AGP, how am I supposed to deal with that? And,
yeah, I get you.
And then also, it seems so arbitrary. Like, I'm AGP primarily because of two factors. I consider myself bisexual, and I transitioned old. So, is that just an? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It seems arbitrary that my being a bisexual, if I'm really a bisexual, is the sole determiner of whether or not my identity is a fetish. I don't know. I mean, I think I hit every single HSTS checkbox except for bi and age. And I mean, I think as long as my therapist and I talked about it, is like, maybe I'm a skewed statistic. I don't know. I can't tell how I fit into the narrative. And I even asked Ray Blanchard himself, like, he just said, I don't believe you, Olivia. I don't think your story is true. And I was frustrated. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, one thing I also would ask, do you think like a lot of people stigmatize it because they don't really understand it fully? Like they make it out as if it's a fetish, dirty kind of thing, when maybe that's probably not actually the case of them, if that's what they are. Do you think there's a lot of that going on?
Yes. I think that the stigmatization of AGP is the primary reason no one wants to be considered AGP. And calling it a fetish while using these examples of people who may or even may not be AGP, like, I don't know. It just confuses the subject. What is the I don't understand the concept of AGP. Like, let's like break it down. Like, why did he name it that? Like, so I'm a male and I'm attracted to myself as a woman, right? But I have a penis. So how is that gynephilia if I'm attracted to a body with a penis? That's androphilia, right? But I don't know. So, and then if I, have sex with men, it's not real. I'm pseudo. I'm just using the man to feel like a woman. I don't know. I don't remember doing that. I mean, I used to have sex with guys way before I transitioned. I mean, I've had sex with guys since I was a teenager. How does that work? I wasn't, I didn't imagine myself as a girl while I was doing it. So, but certainly I imagined myself as a girl doing it after I transitioned. I don't know. It's so confusing by what they mean. And then he was like, well, did you ever masturbate while you were dressed as a girl? I'm like, well, yeah, I did. But I wasn't attracted to the clothing. I just happened to be dressed as a girl when I did it. Or like, did you ever have sexual arousal when you were getting dressed? Well, yeah, I was going to go clubbing and pick up a guy. That's the entire point. Like, it's easier to pick up certain types of guys when you look like a pretty girl, right? Versus going to a gay club, right? And you pick up a different type of guy. So I don't know. I don't know what they mean it just depends on each situation.
Yeah, I think the thing with both AGP and like gender identity theory they both kind of assume the opposite, that people are lying or people are telling the truth, and it's never going to be easy or really possible to prove one way or the other. And like, I think AGP, I wonder if like a bit more knowledge would help a lot of people stigmatize it less. But then, I don't know. Like, I spoke with, I don't know if you know who Ray Alex Williams is.
I do. I like his channel.
Yeah, I spoke with him a few weeks ago. He explained a lot of stuff in quite an easy way. And it's obviously not like, you know, a fetish in the common way, depending on what it is. I mean, to me, it seems to cover an awful lot of different things. And I guess it's really just based on what Blanchard observed and stuff. So I'm never really sure how much credence to put on it. But at the same time, I think, I don't know, it is difficult. Like, I think any trans woman still carries a lot of maleness with them. And that, like, that probably informs what we're seeing in a lot of these AGP types, you know?
Yeah. Well, I can say that I do know one absolute for sure AGP. Like she had said, I'm an AGP. She just flat out said it to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she would go into detail about her activities. And I was like, oh, so there are like she would say, I have mirrors all over my house because I like to look at myself and, you know, pleasure myself. I'm like, oh, like, oh, so I've never done that. And I don't identify like with that behavior. So I can't, that's what makes me think I'm not one, but I'm included over arbitrariness. And so I'm so confused. And nor do I think, honestly, like people say HSTS is the good category. No, it is not. It is just a mean description, right? So I don't think that's like, granted, I have been a prostitute, right? But my entire existence, say, let's assume that I am AGP, or not AGP, HSTS. My entire existence I did not transition to trick straight men and to be a sex worker. I didn't, and that's not the motivation either. That his entire description of HSTS is also wrong. And so, but I can't speak to how wrong AGP is because I don't really feel that I am one, nor can I understand it enough to pick it apart. So I'm kind of, when I talk about the issue of AGP versus HSTS, I feel that I'm always defending myself. Like, oh, you just don't want to be the bad kind. And so I mean, I think at this point, I would just say, okay, I am technically AGP. And that's why I say I'm technically one because I'm bisexual. But I still think both categories are kind of hard to understand. Like just the naming structure of it is counterintuitive. Like you have a male body, but you're autogynephilic. That makes no sense. So I think that my critique of it is he made it counterintuitive to understand and then a bit arbitrary based on sexual orientation. And I think that he's a little bit heterophobic. He's a gay man. And so he made the heterosexual segment of his theory look bad, like gross. You know, like how heterosexual people make homosexuality look gross. I think he had a little bit of internal struggle there. And that came across in his theory.
Maybe. I mean, we wouldn't obviously know. I mean, I've never spoken to him. I don't want to stay on this forever.
Gotcha.
I think there's definitely a slant put on it by like trans communities to an extent, mostly because of the way it's like laid out. Like you've got HSTS and then AGP. It's like one of them's not like the other straight away. Yeah. And people don't want to be called things that have file on the end of them, you know? So I think
it's true.
I think what I tend to think about is I don't know how much a community has to accept a label for it to be true, if at all. But at the same time, it's going to not have much usage because the community doesn't accept it. And the community's understanding of it is slanted straight away because they don't like the name of it. And like, if you've met people that call themselves AGP and have not been nice people, then again, you know, that's things that might slant it. But I mean, what I will say, like, I don't know if AGP is the most important thing to me. It's interesting to discuss, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably about all the thoughts I have.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. You know, I don't know how to debate the topic. It's fraught with antagonism, and I think gender criticals using it as a hammer against us makes us reflexively want to say it's gobbledygook, and it's maybe
Yeah, I think the meme potential of like the name AGP as well and what it means, that's another. And to be clear, I don't know how someone like Blanchard could have predicted that, because meme culture wasn't really a thing in the way that it is today, you know? So I think that's probably not helped as well. But then, I don't know, like there's people who are going to use all sorts for all sorts of purposes. Like, I think you have to kind of look past that. But it's not gonna make people want to take it on, I guess. It's a difficult one. I think the idea needs a bit of a facelift, maybe, because there is stuff that I find quite compelling in there for sure.
I do too. I definitely see there are lines of truth in the typology. My nitpick would be, I think I should fall into one category versus the other, but technically, according to the author of the theory, I fall into the one that I don't identify with. And whether that's, an internal issue where I have shame versus the reality of it's just a little too arbitrary, I don't know.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
I do know I like going into LGBT on 4chan, and that forum is so obsessed with this theory. They are just can't stop talking about it. So I'm like, well, maybe, if that place can't stop talking about it, maybe it's not all that with it as a theory. Because, I don't know if that's the place to find psychological truths.
Well, I don't know. I mean, 4chan's just another place people congregate. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if I'd put value on that.
Well, I do like in that you can get really honest descriptions of things via the anonymity. And so I have noticed I think this is a true story. And then I read something about this guy, I had told my story there, and then another person told a very similar story and they came with this theory called punished HSTS, where you're an HSTS and you were beaten until the point you could pretend to be masculine. And that's pretty much what I did. Even though I was never very masculine, I certainly had an entirely fake personality, fake voice, fake body movements, everything.
Yeah, because I mean, being perceived as feminine for a lot of people is going to be the same as being perceived as gay, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a straight boy. I come across quite feminine. Like, my voice, I didn't do any training or anything. It just kind of always sounded like this. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never done voice training either. This is my natural voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think many people do. I have a good voice.
I don't know.
I wanted to ask, sorry, this is a bit of a random question. If you don't want to answer, then don't worry about it. But in terms of like sex work, because I'm an extremely sheltered person and I'm not a very sexual person, so I don't know anything about this area. Is it advantageous for a trans woman to be intact, shall we say?
Yes. 100%. 100%. That is exactly what they pay for.
Yeah.
98% of the time, right? 98% of the time, that's what the money is for.
And do you get a lot of like straight guys? What's the demographics?
I have there are some straight guys, but if they're straight, I met them in person before they knew I was trans. So anyone I would meet online, they're going to essentially know I'm trans and what it's all about. Or they have sought me out. For the most part, they seek me out.
Yeah.
And then, I use dating apps and things like that. I have really, so I did get an actual job, and I'm getting old, so I really don't do it like I did 10 years ago, it just, it takes a toll on you emotionally and physically. Like, it's not a great life. It is not glamorous, and it's so dangerous. Um, but yeah, that's what they want. Like, once you get the surgery, yeah,
Not much point in
then
doing it
only
anymore.
straight guys want you. Yeah, there's no point, because only straight guys want you, and then they're not paying for not the real thing.
So like, wait, so is it more kind of gay people that want to have sex with a man with a penis, a woman with a penis, as it were?
Um, Closet, like, so it's either bisexuals who, like open bisexuals are often, they're the most chill. Like, they're the most chill. And then the rat, and then, but the money is in closet homosexuals.
Yeah,
Like, they can't deal with their own shame. They would never be able to make out with a guy with a muscular body, but they sure do want to practice doing oral on a guy. And, it's the easiest money one could ever make.
I
And,
can
and,
imagine.
but you know what I mean? And so here's the thing. They want to look up as they're doing it and squeeze boobs while looking you in the eye. It's the number one thing they pay for.
Yeah, fair
Like,
enough.
that's the money. They don't want to see a boy's face. They don't want to hear a boy's voice. They like the boobs with the penis.
So you don't get many like FTM sex workers, I'm guessing.
I don't know. I don't know as many. I have never met an FTM sex worker, so I doubt it. I just have never met one.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Oh, that's crazy. Listen, I know nothing about that whole area, so it's like I don't know. I like learning things, I guess.
But people are nice, and I mean, it's a weird thing. Like there's the religious people, they go to church. They can't be openly seen with a trans person. Certainly not with a man, but they have desires. They're lonely, and it's a lot like any other form of prostitution. It's really about, they want to feel heard. They want someone to understand them and to tell them they're not bad, they're good, they're attractive. I like being with you, and to just make them feel okay with themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. People aren't getting prostitutes usually because they want to feel bad about themselves. Like they want to feel better, I guess. Sorry, that was really dumb. I don't know. My brain is dying.
Well, yeah, I don't think people generally use prostitutes for a quick orgasm,
Yeah, it'd be a
because
waste
you
of
don't
money.
need to. Yeah. So, and especially, closeted homosexuals, like, at least in America, there are tons of places for you to go get a super free closet homosexual fix, like adult bookstores, where the glory holes are.
Oh my
I mean,
god.
you can go to any one of those and you will see rows of trans prostitutes just trying to get that cash before they go in there and have, the boy do it. The hole is there so they don't have to see the face. You're there as the face to go, hey, why don't we could hug while we're doing it. It's not so lonely. Give me $50. And you give them that, pick door A, or we can go into the big room. That's kind
That's
of how the whole
crazy.
transaction works. Yeah, it's crazy. Shame in the LGBT community does create both trans and it facilitates our making money to exist. So I don't know. It's complicated. I believe, compulsory heterosexuality does create trans in and of itself, I believe.
Yeah, I can imagine
And it
that.
makes people closet homosexual who seek out trans so they cannot have to deal with their own shame.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So you were saying, I guess we'll move topic again. So you were saying earlier about your conversion therapy and about trying to have conversations about it. What kind of reactions do you get from a lot of trans people when you talk about conversion therapy?
That it's a troublesome topic and that bringing it up will do more damage than it will solve because it doesn't matter. The person who I brought it up to with that really kind of like put a pause on my ability to go, hey, maybe you're right, was Arden. So I had called the Trans Lifeline, or not but the Trans Atlantic show. And I said,
The
hey,
line.
so I have this therapy. And and this was when I was still struggling with, did it cause me to be this way? Or was I this way before the therapy? And I can go back and forth. Like, if I had the therapy, what were they curing if I wasn't already like this? Do you understand my struggle internally? And so she had said it doesn't matter if it caused it or not. In the end, there's no cure. And I just kind of landed on that as I think she's right, even though I don't agree with her on anything else. That I kind of think she's right. It doesn't matter if it caused it. What are you going to do? It's there now.
I think having knowledge of what's going on and not wanting to be ignorant is a good thing, right?
Yeah. But really what comes down to, and the trans activists really, and I, is about the famous trans kid, right? And I go, look, maybe we shouldn't be transing these kids who had this therapy, even though there is no cure. I don't know the answer. And they're like, do not say this. Do not say this. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't know the answer. Like, do we let a kid who was beaten from 4 years old until 7 years old, until, say, your evangelical mother, say, decided, oh, I can't cure you and I can't be a preacher, but oh, I can join the activist community and get famous, right? That happened. Is that bad or is it good? I don't know. I know that the mom really hates me and I don't know how to do about that. And I have kept quiet, but they're not the only one. All the famous, super famous trans kids had this therapy, as far as I know. Like the pre-puberty ones. So Jazz Jennings, for example, beaten, 3 years old, stop being a girl. Because they won't stay gay. It's based in homophobia. So they beat you saying stop being a girl because they don't want you to know you're probably gay. That's the theory. And then you internalize, you can't stop being something that you're not. Therefore, you are a girl. 100%, that's how the identity forms, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think going back to like what you were saying the attitude was in terms of it doesn't matter, you can't do anything about it. To me, it seems like an attempt to limit understanding. It's a bit like how, like, the brain stuff is pretty bunk anyway. You know, the trans people have different brains and stuff. As far as I know, there's not really much merit to that. But people were very resistant to that whole thing anyway, because they actually don't want it to be like predictable who's trans and who's not. So to me, it sounds like they're trying to limit the conversation so that we don't get more into what's actually going on, you know?
Yeah. Well, it really doesn't do. I mean, the trans community already faces the accusation that being trans is either gay conversion or a fetish. And they don't want a trans person saying, yeah, it's conversion. So what? Happy conversion. Like, that's where I'm landing as a philosophy. And that's not necessarily going over well with my trans activist friends.
Fair enough. So what kind of response do you get?
Mostly the response is, please don't talk about it. And please don't, name names. And please don't they just like, take care of yourself, Olivia. Just try to live your best life. Things like that.
What?
Like, don't talk about it.
What's telling you to shut up? Like,
yeah, they tell me to shut up. or they pretend not to understand. Like I could break it down, and they're like, "What? What do you mean?" Like they'll just talk me in circles.
Yeah, fair enough. I do experience that a lot. But I don't know why people would think it's okay to police certain people's speech and to try and stop certain people from speaking out. You'd think they'd be worried that if they did that, that those people would just kind of end up like me and trying to break out and tell as many people as possible of what's been going on, you know?
That is true. I don't know. I have gone through periods where I felt activisty. Um, since COVID, I wasn't, but I feel more activisty these days. I don't know.
When you say activisty, what you kind of activisting for?
Well, when Nikki and I would do it, it was she had a charity and I helped with, and they would do help people with name and marker changes, or we would do goofy things like we held a fake, like we were going to protest, but we didn't really protest anything. We just like, we love you, we're not crazy, things like that, kind of an anti-protest against the more woke version, and so it was more tongue-in-cheek, just to be different. So that's kind of like agitation. You're like, things like that.
Yeah, I get you. So you've been in with like trans activists, you're saying. Did you have a lot of conversations? Did you have a lot of conversations where there was disagreements?
Oh yeah.
How did they handle them?
I'm not afraid to disagree. They will, well, depending on who it is. The main one just started blogging about me.
Oh my God.
Calling me a white supremacist for a bit. And
did they know you personally?
Just all sorts. Oh yeah, we met. We had mutual friends. I even liked her.
And did they
it wasn't like that.
Did they talk to you about what they thought was like white supremacists before like blogging about it, or did they just start talking about you?
No, they just started talking about me.
Oh my God.
And all of it was from a Facebook comment, right? Just
it's always like, nothing.
Come on, you're being ridiculous. Yeah, it was just I disagreed on some minutia. It was so over the top, and so it can be highly emotionally charged. How about that? I would say the activists jumped from 0 to 100 super fast.
That seems to be a common thing. I was watching, what was it? It was a video by a guy called DJ Mule. I watched a lot of this like lefty kind of schlop stuff. I used to watch BreadTube a lot, and now I just mostly watch drama videos about BreadTubers. But this DJ Mule guy, he was like doing protests and getting involved in protests that are like pro-Palestine. At one point, he talked about a meeting between him and some Pride organizers that lasted about 4 minutes because the Pride organizers weren't interested. And to me, what it sounded like was that they probably didn't really sort of, take their time bringing in kind of talking points or whatever. They just went straight to this is genocide, you have to stop helping the genocide and stuff like that. I wonder why you get activists that kind of skip so many steps,
I don't know. It's very, I don't know. It's my friend Nikki, when she was the best activist I've ever met, she got into it with the Pride Committee herself over silly issues, or her organization lost funding from the HRC over a comment that trans women shouldn't have beards and go into the ladies' restroom. Like simple stuff. Like, so you have to toe the line, or they will come down with a hammer on you.
Yeah, and then they will never toe the line and always say things in the most absolute terms possible.
Yeah. It's just hard. And it's a business, right? The culture war is a business. And so you have to kind of try to, who is sincere and who is not sincere in the debate itself. And you have to, even if the person is, and then you go, oh, in the realm of the sincere, who can I work with that isn't so emotionally damaged that they can have a conversation? Because you'll never have a conversation with the insincere that's productive.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know the feeling, like, you know, I talk to people occasionally. I never know what anyone's going to be like. I can watch, like, videos and stuff, and I can form opinions about what they seem to think and stuff. But I'll never really know who's honestly being serious and who isn't. And it's kind of difficult. I think what they seem to do, and maybe I'm wrong here, but like in trans communities, it feels like there's this kind of, you judge people on like the beliefs they state rather than what kind of person they are, because to get to know a person takes a lot longer. Whereas if someone says, I'm left wing and I'm pro-trans, then that'll sound good compared to, oh, I'm a evangelical Christian or something. Do you think that's kind of a thing where they tend to, you know, go on vibes, I guess, and like people say they're this thing, therefore they must be?
Yeah, I think that we're very tribal these days, and so you use signifiers to say what tribe you're going to align with. So trans women or women means you have to say this to get in this group, or, you know, the most marginalized group is Black, trans, Jewish, lesbians, or whatever. You know, you just have to hit the boxes. You just got to check the boxes, but you have to check the boxes on the right too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's kind of any, there's so many thought cults out there, and like, they're all like that. And then outsiders don't know even what the boxes are. So someone like me, I'd never have a chance in a lot of trans circles, because if I don't say the wrong thing beforehand, I'm going to end up saying the wrong thing at something or other. And like, I don't know how people can operate that way, because I don't know, if you have to keep quiet about something, to me, that like fucks with my mental health.
You just have to be savvy in how you communicate. And you have to pick the timing of your battles carefully.
Yeah.
I've managed to stay out of, you know, the spotlight for the most part, although I've had my run-ins with people. I think I'm pretty good at it if I want to be. I'm going to give it another try.
Yeah.
I just have to get a computer.
That's true. Yeah, it does help. To be fair, this one is dying, so kind of hoping I'll get a new one.
I did really
soon,
well on. I liked Periscope. I used to be a streamer on Periscope a long time ago.
Okay.
And then I got up to about 75, 80,000 subs. It was a super fun time. It helped my mental health a lot. I didn't ever really talk about trans issues for the most part. Sometimes I did, but it was mostly goofy shit. And then my final one, you know, I got the most awesome live stream ever. You can ask Ray Blanchard's colleague, Dr. Amate. He was viewing, so I'm not making this up. I live streamed my kidnapping.
Oh my God.
I was, you know, working down the street, and this guy, he knew I was trans, by the way. And then he was like, I'm going to murder you, bitch. And then we got in the car, and then finally he got me on the freeway. You know, he hit me really hard, right, by the way, in the face. You know, I did try to like grab the keys, you know, the whole things until we got to 100. And then I'm like, I ain't trying to die. Right. But it was interesting. I'm better, but yeah, that's how my live streaming career ended. I live streamed my attempted murder.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff did you talk about, like, if it wasn't trans issues? Obviously, I'm not saying you have to talk about trans issues or nothing, but...
I would talk about the news a lot. I did media reviews. I like to review things. So I used to, you know, I used to be like, I've been published as a writer a few times, even before transition. And then most of my things that have been published have been like reviews. Although you can't get paid for reviews anymore because they're so ubiquitous for the most part. But yeah, that was a pretty fun. I would do restaurant stuff. And then I moved over, you know, I moved all that stuff to like, I do it on Google Maps, and I'm very popular on Google Maps. Like people like how I write reviews. So that's a lot of what I did. was just say, oh, I like this restaurant or this movie, or I would just have, interact with the regular viewers and make a little community. And that was the stream, essentially. I met other trans people and, I kept up with them. And one was she was a viral trans teen. And as I followed her, we became friends on Facebook. I'm not friends with her. I deleted that Facebook, but um, she's not a D trans, but I wouldn't say she felt the experience of affirmation. She's kind of been pretty clear that it wasn't the greatest. And then another topic, a lot of the mothers of really young trans girls who transition young end up being trans men after they've grown up. Like her mom became a trans man, and he's a real big activist now, whereas she is like dropped off the radar. Like she is very incognito.
That's crazy.
It's a thing. Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. I asked this guy, Rowan, he's on our Rowan Atkinson or something. He's a trans man, right? And he's got a few books out. And I'm like, have you noticed this? And he's like, yeah, let's not talk about this. He did it. He was like, oh, yeah, you're not wrong, Olivia. Because I was like, hey, is this your daughter? Because I don't know who her mom really was. I just, I wasn't. I knew it from Periscope, and then he was like, "Yeah, let's not talk about this, Olivia." And then they've never talked to me again. They just left it there. Not that I'm a bad person, not that I'm wrong. Just we're not talking about this issue. And that let me believe there is a thing, because I've heard like 3 stories of this, where the youngest version. That's why I think the youngest version of trans, there's an issue there.
Yeah. Do you think it comes from the parents initially? Maybe then.
I know that mine did. I mean, my mom, was my mom a trans guy? I don't know. I know that she had gender issues, and that, I don't know. It was a harsh life.
That's fair enough. I watched a couple of things recently. There was one that there was 2 kids. The older girl transitioned to a boy, and they were about 11 at the time of filming. And then the younger boy transitioned to a girl. Like not long after.
I know that family.
You know them like personally? Oh wow.
On Facebook.
Right.
The only one I know, I told you about. I mean, I've met a lot, like in passing, so I know who they are, and we've chatted even. It's hard. I don't know what to say. Like she was very upset with me when I had said on my Facebook that I think it's conversion therapy. Like she was very upset with me.
Sorry, when you say she,
like the mom of those 2 kids, she was very hurt, and I was like, I'm not trying to hurt you. This isn't. I don't think you understand where I'm coming from, and and that makes it hard. Like, I don't think she's evil. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm talking of a very, very specific thing. And I don't know that she did. I don't believe she did that. So I don't know what's up with that family necessarily. But man, I don't know.
So you think they engaged in conversion therapy?
No, I don't think she did, though.
Oh, right.
I know which one. I mean, conversion theory is I don't think that they were violent. I think perhaps they were very liberal and exposed their children to ideas.
Yeah.
Like, let them just, pretend, do it. More so than a specific instance, like, say, a Jazz Jennings or the kid from the children's show in the UK, who I know for sure you were being told you're a girl. That's a very specific set of circumstances that I want to keep I don't want to go outside of my wheelhouse, because I feel I have a very specific thing that I know happens, and that is all I can truly speak to.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I'm just checking.
Now, how I would ever address that issue, as far as activism goes, I don't know. The only reason I would bring it up specifically is because they are loud activists, like the Hershey candy bar joke. She got an award for doing the British TV show. I mean, it's a kid show. I don't remember the name of it, but she Kai Shapley. I'll be honest who I'm talking about. Was on an award show and she did this. Like my pronouns are she, her, like the candy bar, and I'm like, that is a silly joke, right? And I my brain was telling me, what's up with this? Well, it turns out there was a casting call for a candy company to find a LGBT spokesperson. And that's what they were doing. They were interviewing for a job. They were trying to get a job. I don't like that. Like, that's not appropriate.
Yeah,
ever.
Like singling out, wanting a specific person to target a specific demographic, I guess, for advertising.
Well, I don't like that a stage mom is in charge of her activism.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, you're transing your kid for attention, for power, for influence, to be essentially a new age gender woo preacher. But you did it via beating your kid. Pretty dramatic. I mean, via abuse, via conversion.
Yeah.
And then you're going to, it's like, if you went from, I'm beating you, stop being a girl. And if there was zero time between you're bad for being a girl to yay, my trans daughter, if there's no time, like if you go, oh, I love you, my trans daughter, now you're good, you have totally set that identity. There has to be, I would say, at least a year of I love you, my normal boy. You're good enough as a boy. You don't have to. I'm sorry I said those things. They were because I'm ashamed of having an LGBT kid. Like, if that section does not ever take place, it is heinous and it is wrong. And I believe that.
Yeah. So do you think this happened to Jazz Jennings? Someone's asking about that.
I was told that it did, but I don't know
beatings.
it for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So it's an unconfirmed thing, just to be clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that is secondhand knowledge from someone who says that they knew the family. I don't know that if it's true or not. I can say only one case where I know 100% it happened.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, just so I guess we're clear where it came from and stuff, because someone was asking. So, like, I guess the conversion therapy you're talking about then is trying to not have a gay kid. Is that right?
Well, considering they never used the word gay, you can't, it's hard to know, right? Like,
what else would it be,
I don't know. Yeah. No, what else would it be? It felt like it was homophobia when I was like, oh, they don't just mean I shouldn't be a girl. They mean I shouldn't like boys. And it took me a while to pick that up, like years. I couldn't have picked that up at 4. I started picking it up around puberty when I started getting sexual attraction. Like, oh, this is what I'm not supposed to like. It wasn't necessary, but by that time it was the identity. I mean, it just was already in my head. But yeah, that's totally it.
I gotcha. Sorry, I'm just still checking chat. My brain, it gets to a certain point when I've been streaming and I just, it takes me a minute to think of things.
Yeah. And that's why I was reflexively anti the Florida trans bill, because it was labeled the Don't Say Gay bill. And I'm like, well, if you never say gay, you are absolutely creating trans.
Yeah, that's not how they mean it, I guess. They're trying to invoke, we love to invoke, like, especially stuff that's anti-gay, I find. We love to make parallels between gay struggles and trans struggles. I think it's probably called that more because of that.
Okay, gotcha.
I could be wrong. I mean that's what it sounds like to me. In the UK, there's something called Section 28, and when I think it was the ban on LGBT education in like oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. When it was the ban on like LGBT education in schools, I think people were invoking that then. It kind of seems like a knee-jerk reaction almost to be like, oh, there's something that's kind of anti-trans. Let's compare it to like gay discrimination, you know?
Yeah. I think that it's a double-edged sword. And so if the right wing want to ban acknowledgement of LGBT in schools to stop trans, I think that's the exact opposite. If you want to lower the rate of trans, you give more LGBT education in schools. You tell kids it's okay to be a homosexual. It's okay.
Do you think they should teach kids about like trans identities then?
Well, sure, in that now that we obviously exist in the world and we're not necessarily just quickly going away, and so long as trans, the umbrella, is still a thing, like non-binary people, like as long as you're doing it like that, like there's the social category trans, which means you don't have to be gender non-conforming, but you don't have to medicalize. I think that's absolutely fine. It's not like, who cares? It's just fashion. Maybe don't say that you can really become the opposite sex. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, I disagree because to my mind, it seems like if we're teaching like children about all these identities and stuff, it's more likely to put ideas in their head than confirm any ideas they might have already had in their head.
Maybe. But my contention is healthy children who have involved parents are not even on the radar for this to be a thing. It's you're telling kids who are ashamed of being homosexual that it's okay so that they don't feel the need to be a straight girl if they're a homosexual boy, or be a straight guy if they're a homosexual girl.
Yeah.
I think that's where I think the education of LGBT fails.
I think I get
We're
you.
not doing that. That if we could just let kids understand it's okay, even if your church says it's not okay. Because come on, that's where this conversion is mostly taking place, in churches. Evangelical Christianity creates a lot of trans women and trans men.
Yeah, fair enough. I think I get what you're saying. And I think there's some merit to the idea that changing like some of the language in that way could be helpful. What would you sort of say to like straight trans people though? Like someone like me who wasn't gay?
You broke up a little bit.
Oh, okay. So you've sort of said about making gay people feel like they can be gay and not have to turn into the other things. They can be a straight that instead. Like, how would you sort of appeal to straight people in that way, bearing in mind they're not gay, so there's not that to fix potentially?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't necessarily. I don't know what this. I don't necessarily understand the motive. So like straight before they transition, and then they're like a lesbian trans woman?
Yeah, so the classic kind of AGP,
Okay.
I guess.
Gotcha. I don't know how, like, they're adults. As far as kids go, I don't think that there's anything that we could say to straight kids that would change that trajectory. Like, I don't think that it's based in that, so I don't know what that trajectory is really based in. So I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. It's fine. I mean, you don't have to have answers to literally everything. I understand
I struggle with the concept of how to, like, the mindset of what AGP is, even though I technically am one.
Yeah, I think I get you. The other thing I would say is you sort of talk about how people with more kind of normal, I guess, parents probably aren't at risk of transitioning. Do you not think there's potentially other factors like friend groups, like potentially one of the parents actually has some kind of, they want their kid to be trans for some reason? Do you not think that that's kind of still a possibility, even if the parents are sort of ideal, as it were?
Well, I think that it would be such a greatly reduced chance, like, healthy family life. Those kids generally don't use drugs, they don't get convicted of crimes. All the bad outcomes in life just significantly go down. And I think not calling trans a bad outcome, obviously, but I don't think that. I think as it's a trauma-based thing, I don't think it would be there. I'd add that if a parent wants a trans kid, they're not a good parent. Like,
Well, sure, but they can appear like one. And in other ways of raising their kid, they might be perfectly fine. Like, they're never starving them. They have a clean environment and stuff like that.
I would say that I'm more worried about the Munchausen by proxy trans parent than I am about gosh, I wish I had a girl, I wish I was a gay mom. The gay mom version of trans, that's nothing. I'm not concerned about that. It's the you're going to be either perfectly straight or you're going to be my little trans daughter so we can get on TV.
Of course. I think I get you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we've got, perhaps the problem is where there's so many different kinds of trans people that trans for different reasons, or at least believe they do. Like, for example, if we're able to explain how it works, someone with trauma, it's kind of when you take the trauma out, what would that mean? Like, why are they transitioning if not trauma? Do you think that there's other reasons as well?
Well, yeah, I think that I transitioned. I had trauma, but I would say that I transitioned primarily to stop using my fake personality and to just be myself.
You
and
could be
that
feminine
the
in an
oppression,
acceptable way.
yeah, just to use my real natural manner, to use my natural voice, to just feel like myself. Because I did come out as gay to make sure that I wasn't just going to transition out of homophobia. So I came out of gay like a year and a half before I started taking HRT.
Okay. Sorry, I had another question. It's completely gone. Just give me a sec. Yeah. So how come being like an openly gay man wasn't enough then, I guess?
It because it wasn't about who I could just go have sex with. I mean, I was having gay sex that entire time I pretended to be straight, and I didn't change how I felt, and I was still a fake person. I still used my fake manner, my fake voice, my fake interest, right?
But
So
you didn't really try sort of your more natural thing whilst being a gay guy, though. Is that
no,
right?
I didn't. Yeah,
Okay.
I kept that fake persona the whole time up until I erased it all at once. She gave me a safe space. I, got dressed up and I just became myself instantaneously and I never went back. That's how it happened.
I gotcha. And so you transitioned when you were 40, you said?
Yeah, exactly. On my 40th birthday.
Oh, wow. I think I started identifying on my 24th or something. Did you sort of know that you wanted to be trans for a while before you transitioned, like for a number of years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was just about, I'm going to be a failure. I don't want to be considered a gross person. I'll lose my everything. I won't be pretty. I didn't think I would end up passable. All that.
Yeah, of course.
And then I tried to delete, and then it didn't work. And then I woke up and I'm like, well, I can't do that again. So I better get on this transition thing. Fuck everything. But I didn't. I went to therapy to see if I could and if I should, and I spent about a year and a half in therapy. And then I, got this, went through the later stages of the letters.
Oh, yeah. If I may ask, how long have you been trans then?
10 years legally.
Oh, wow.
So I'm 50 exactly.
Okay.
And so 10 years.
Yeah. Have things changed a lot, do you think, in 10 years in terms of trans people?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I didn't it seemed there was a weird thing going on back then, 2014, 2015, those time frame. All I know is right before I'm about to switch jobs, I come in to work one day and stupid Caitlyn Jenner had come out, and then all these people, deluge of other trans are coming out, and I'm like, ugh. And everyone could clock me, and I was not prepared for that. One day I'm at work, they're like, you're trans, and I'm like, how the heck would you know that? I don't know. I did grow boobs ridiculously fast, and that was hard to hide very fast. So I had to kind of trans pretty fast.
I was wondering, do you think Caitlyn Jenner kind of lit the fuse for some of this stuff then?
No, I mean, we were obviously, a whole lot of us were having the same thoughts at the same time, kind of like a zeitgeist for trans. And I don't understand how that happened.
Yeah.
What was that? What was going on back then where we all was like, yeah, I kind of need to do this right now?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess I would have started a year after you, maybe. I say it's been 9 years. I've been identifying for 10, but I don't put any real weight on identity myself. Do you think it's a gender identity thing, or do you not really subscribe to that thing?
I don't know how to feel about. I mean, I think I have a gender identity, but it's only conversational, meaning I'm a trans woman, so I'm a woman. I feel like a woman in that I feel like myself. And I mean, identity does exist. You can have identities in many types of things. So I guess gender identity then must exist. If gender exists and identity exists, gender identity must then exist. I don't know.
Do you think one thing I really wonder about gender identity, and I don't know how to word this very well, but is it, do you think it's innate, or do you think it's something that people willfully choose? Because surely if anything is something you can just think up for yourself, then how can it be real in a way? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I totally understand this question. I don't think that gender identity is innate. Identities aren't innate. They are imposed by the group. But gender expression, that's innate. I'm just myself, right? I had to stop being myself to conform to the expectations. And I transitioned to allow myself to have my own expression, my gender expression, whatever that is. And so I only know how I naturally want to behave and interact with the world. And that gets labeled as super feminine. And therefore, I accept a identity of trans woman in order to have my natural expression validated and accepted.
I think I get you. Sorry, just one sec.
But I could give or take any label, to be quite honest with you. They're just kind of
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's too many labels. I think we're too quick to categorize things. The more I've been doing this, the more I think about things like like people talk about whether gay exists. I think someone was kind of talking about it here, where it's not really an identity, it's more an action. And I'm a lot more open to that kind of thought than I used to be. Because, like, what is being gay? Like, has it ever been medically observed? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. There's no test for it, but people have, you find attractive, what you find attractive. And I do agree that behavior is different, than cognition or emotion, right? So think of the personality as a three-legged stool. You remove any of the legs of the stool, it falls over, it's no longer a stool. So it kind of makes no sense to say, oh, if you remove behavior, do you still have the same personality? Because say you change your behavior, well, your thinking will change and your emotions will change. If you change your thinking, your behavior will change, and you change one, the other two follow suit. It's a very dynamic. The personality is a very dynamic system.
Okay, I think I get you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think we categorize things way too much. For me personally, I wonder if it would have been helpful for me, for more people to kind of express how men can be, feminine. Like, I wonder if I'd have had a much easier time kind of coping with my gender if I'd felt more okay with just being what I was. Like, do you feel the same way? Do you think if you were more reinforced that men can be whatever they want, they can be feminine, they can dress a certain way, do you think you would have transitioned?
Oh no. It never would have occurred to me. Like, I didn't think that I was a girl until I was told to stop being one. If I was never bullied for being effeminate, I would have never questioned what my sex was, or a gender would never have come into it. I just don't see how it would have.
I think I get you. So it's almost like there is like a social contagion in that way almost, because people are kind of putting things onto you in that way.
Yeah, I do believe society creates transgender. Yes, that is both right wing and left wing ideologies create transgender. Like together, they may argue, but they're doing, like, whether it's Islam who says you can't be gay, or the woke left who's like, yay, trans, the same result happens, in that you have to conform to the group and you must accept this label.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Like, for me, I think we should...
If I had felt...
Oh, no, carry on.
I'm sorry. If I had felt that I could, be myself, I wouldn't have transitioned. Like, that was whatever mental block that I had, that I formed from my life, that I can't be identified as a man and be myself, is why I transitioned. Okay, nothing gotcha. Ever fixed that my entire life. Like, I got a degree in psych and counseling to cure myself, and I've ruminated about this for decades. I can't fix it, and so I went with it.
Yeah, of course. Like, when you say being yourself, do you mean kind of just how you feel you would naturally be? Or is there kind of a more conscious thing to that?
Just like how I'm talking right now. Before, I would have a metered speech. I would pick my words carefully. Or how I held my hands, how I walked, how every single part was learned via repetition and directives from when I was young.
And you were like shamed
every
for it,
part of my personality.
Yeah. So I guess because you were shamed for it.
I mean, it was part of therapy. Yeah, shamed for it, but actually, it was part of here's how you sit. Let's practice. Here's how you hold a cup. Let's practice. That was part of it.
Of course, yeah.
It was very deliberate. Now, I don't think that my experience is indicative, but I don't know. I don't think that, seeing as how I know more than one person, I'm not alone. I think that it's not as uncommon as we want to believe, and it's a dirty secret.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm starting to understand. Like, what do you think? I want to ask something else. Do you think there's any womanhood in transitioning from male to female? Do you think you take on any womanhood?
Yes.
How
In
so?
that if you are perceived as a woman, you'll be treated as one. And I think you'll learn a few things. Like, it's not as nice as you think it is.
Like a social womanhood?
Like,
Yeah.
some parts are nicer, some parts are not so nice.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I think people were worse to me when I was a guy, but then I couldn't measure up to other guys, was how I felt. And that's why I say, like, if I'd had more kind of reassurance and more acceptance as a guy who's just a bit different, like, that probably would have helped me. And I wonder if maybe in the future generations they'll kind of experience more of that, and less of these transitions will seem like they're necessary.
I hope so. I think that we can hopefully build a more tolerant society for gay and lesbian people, and that in and of itself, providing that security that you are okay and you're not abnormal, and we can stop bullying and things like that. I think it will at least cut down on the type of trans that I feel I am, or like the obviously ones who do it to escape the oppression of their homosexuality or effeminacy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, God, when we talk about like transitioning to escape something, I don't know, like, there's so little evidence as to how innate any of this is, I guess. And I kind of worry that we've just completely slipped into delusion instead of talking about things in real terms, just to protect people's feelings. And it seems like everything's been being done for completely the wrong reason, probably including the person transitioning half the time.
I don't disagree, but at the end, I can't change society, so I had to change myself.
Yeah. It's kind of a shame people feel the need to do that, I guess, in that case. Because changing yourself won't change society either, nor necessarily like the way you'll be treated. But it's difficult. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's odd because, gosh, I'm treated so much better. Like, other than like if I'm walking alone, being dumb, or getting drunk at a bar with a bunch of guys, yeah, it can be dangerous, and I might get groped. And if they grope the wrong part, I could get murdered. But it's still, I enjoy it. I like being seen as attractive. I like that guys are nice to me. I like having, being just not being considered a threat around kids or
Oh, really?
female friends.
I'm surprised by that.
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, like it's male. Like, say, could you be a male kindergarten teacher without having suspicion? No. Like, the misandry it's kind of common. And I think that, at least for MTF, I think that we should deal with misandry, and that misandry, alongside with homophobia, is also kind of a cause of dysphoria. Men can't act this way. Men have to have this role, blah, blah, blah. Like, both affected me. And that's why I don't I think me and TERFs don't get along. I think they're just very misandrist. And it reminded me of, like, like you guys are the reason I'm trans. Like you think you hate me, but like you would have been in on turning me this way when I was a kid. I get a lot of that vibe from them.
Do you think so? Because to me, it kind of seems like a lot of the gender critical side, and maybe I'm talking about less extreme people than you, they seem to want to push the idea that males and females can just be kind of whatever they want within those groups, and that's just what they are. Do you think it's kind of the opposite of that in some ways?
I think I think gender criticals are very gender essentialist, and that males dress one way, they act one way, females dress one way, they act one way. That Phil Illy blue dress debacle is all I ever needed to know about them. Like, if boys can't wear dresses, well, then take your pants off, lady, and go make me a sandwich, you hoe.
Oh, what happened there? I'm not too familiar.
So Phil Illy, he's like, he owns the I'm an AGP thing, right? He's like trying to be open and honest. And so he went to some gender critical conference, and they lost their damn minds over his wearing a dress.
Does he kind of go
like,
as a
how
he,
dare you, pervert? Yeah, he's like, I'm a man, I'm a male. I'm a male, I'm a man in a dress. Men, we can wear whatever we want. Gender, there is no gender uniform. And they just kept calling him a pervert. They tried to have him removed. That's just wrong. That's gender essentialism. And it's also a sense of female supremacy, meaning we can wear pants. You'll wear what we tell you to wear. We get all the jobs that we want, like female only jobs, but there's no such thing as a male only job. And that's what equality is to them. And they say things like sex-based rights. That's like, what? No, rights are not based on sex anymore. What they mean is we get all the rights and you get the rights we say, boys, because you're bad.
Right. Sorry, someone's questioning the Phil Lilly thing. Do you think... Hang on, let me try and word this. I don't really want to drag people on when it's like the first time I'm talking to someone, because this feels a bit kind of mean. But like...
Oh, I can handle it.
Do you think like the AGP thing is offensive to some women? As in, like, just because you're admitting you're an AGP, you're pretty much telling the world that you kind of fetishize womanhood in some way and want that for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Do you think that might be more what bothers them?
Well, I mean, perhaps, but then we're back to AGP is a nefarious fetish. And then we have to just, I find that I'm always like, okay, on one hand, it's not a fetish. We should stop acting like they're calling it a fetish. But then, on the other hand, they do they're calling it a fetish. And like, if you say you have this fetish, even if there's no solution. It's like we lose on both ends of the conversation.